Hello Grinder School, this is Code Red Rules. Welcome to part 2 of How to Master Heads Up, No Limit Hold'em. Today we're going to be going over the big blind, and this is part 2 of, I believe, part 4 for right now. The next part is going to be about some opponent types and adjustments to make against those guys. And then part 4, I haven't quite decided yet what I'm going to put in there. Probably some things that I haven't covered yet in the first 3, but I won't really know that until I get done with the third lectures part. In part 2 here, the big blind, we're going to be talking basically the entire time about playing out of position. And heads up, the big blind, in today's games at least, is always last to act pre-flop and also first to act post-flop. So for defending the blind, I guess we can talk about 4 specific areas, or I've separated this up into 4 areas. 1, pre-flop, 2 flop, 3 turn, 4 river. Pre-flop, most of our strategies are talking about when our opponent raises us when they're in position, alright? Because some players will limp in, and actually the ones that we like to play against will be limping in a lot on the button, and giving us a free shot in the big blind or being able to raise for value in the big blind. We're going to be talking mostly about when they raise our blind from the button. In the second part, we're going to be talking about whether or not we should be betting or checking, and checking includes like either check raising as a bluff or check raising for value. Also on the turn, we talk about either whether or not we should like change initiative on the turn, either by check raising again or by leading, or check calling. And then the river, we're going to be talking a little bit about when to go for value bets, how to defend against thin value bets. Let's go ahead and get started right away. Pre-flop, playing against a raise. Okay, our opponent has raised. We only really have 3 options on what we can do. We can 3-bet for value, we can call, or we can 3-bet as a bluff. Alright, so first let's go over what hands we should be calling with. Like in other forms of hold'em, you should be calling with hands that are profitable but not yet strong enough to 3-bet. Alright, and what hands that we can call with depends on a few factors. 1, raise size. Secondly, stack size, and then thirdly, the skill level that we have. So if our opponent, some opponents will min raise, some opponents will 3x at 4x, or even sometimes even 5x. There are some kind of crazy players out there. And what hands we can call with will depend solely on the raise size and the hand range that they're making that raise size with. So for the rest of this lecture, we're going to assume 3x, the 3x raise size. And for stack size, we can call more hands 100 big blinds than we could when we're playing against 75, a 50, or even a short stack or 20 big blind guy. A lot of players don't like to play against 20 big blind guys, especially for this reason, just because they can't call out of hands they normally would call with out of position because it's not as profitable, and the SPR spots get really weird. And then finally, for the skill level, if you feel like you have a higher skill than your opponent, then you can actually play more hands out of position than you would otherwise. When your opponent has a significant skill advantage on you, 1, you might want to look at why you're playing them, but also 2, you don't want to be giving him profitable situations, right? And so whenever he plays in position on you, he's going to be gaining money. Remember from our first lecture, position is king, right? So whoever has position is going to be winning the most money. If that's how the play goes. That said, we can't effectively have him steal our blind every single time, and so we have to call with some hands. So let's just say, for assuming a 3x raise, we're going to be calling with this hand range right here. Alright, so I'm going to pull over Poker Stove. 22.3% would be roughly, okay, these, most of the pairs here. We're not going to include aces, queens, jacks, or tens, because, anything higher than these, we're going to talk about a little bit later, about 3-betting for value and whatnot. Alright, so for the aces, I see one big mistake that I see a lot of players make is playing too many ace-x's hands for 3x arrays. Playing hands like ace-deuce through ace-6 out of position becomes a marginal mistake just because they become really hard to play. Same thing with like weak kings and stuff, where they look really nice, but at the same time, they don't play very well. And in fact, they play pretty horribly. And we want to call with hands that we can probably get 2 streets of value from with top pair. So that is why with hands like, an ace 8 offsuit we can call with, and king 8 offsuit, because so a lot of times we're going to flop like second and top pair with hands like king 8, and we can go for 2 streets of value. Same thing when we flop like top pair of kings or top pair of aces, we can go for 2 streets of value. Alright, and so usually the 8 is the cutoff line for me. I don't like to play too many like offsuit connectors. Those are the hands that are purity SPOE. Jack 8 suited, we go pretty low. And then some suited connectors here, let me know if I hit 22.3%, should be right there. So that's a pretty good calling green. Sometimes we'll call 10s instead of 3-bet. But for just starting off, let's just assume this is going to be our standard calling range. 22.3, 22.8%, just around there. It's okay if you guys want to like screenshot this and write this down. I mean, if you guys are just getting started playing, heads up. I don't like to see a lot of players calling with like, 9, 7 suited, 9, 6 suited, or even hands like 10, 8, and ace 6 and ace 2s. In fact, whenever you see somebody calling like in showdown, take a note, right? If they're outside of this hand range, what they called with, either when they didn't re-raise a hand like king queen or ace jack, or when they decided to call with like king 3, because information is king, and so whenever you get this information against your opponent, you should definitely be using it. All right, so 22.8% for the calling, 22.3%.